distinguished heads of states and governments, distinguished ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to salute you all with my most heartfelt emotions. I also would like to convey my most heartfelt greetings from the heart of Asia and to all of our brothers and sisters around four corners of the world. And I also would like to state the fact that I have brought along with me the love and gratitude of 82 million brothers and sisters in Turkey. Under the leadership and auspices of Malaysia, the Kuala Lumpur Summit is being organized for the first time at the levels of the global leaders, and it gives me great excitement to be able to get together with you this morning. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister of Malaysia, my distinguished friend, Tun Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, for his very gracious invitation and his very sincere hospitality. Thank you on behalf of myself, my nation, and my delegation. And I also would like to welcome all of the politicians, all of the members of the academia, representatives of the NGOs, and all of the other participants coming from four corners of the world, especially from the Islamic world, in order to attend this meeting this morning. I would like to state the fact that the contributions of all of the participants here will be crucial for your brothers and sisters back home in Turkey, along with the experiences that you will be sharing so generously with us. The Kuala Lumpur Summit hopefully will strengthen the solidarity between us, and it will contribute tremendously to the revival of the Ummah. Distinguished brothers and sisters, today we shall be talking about the prospects on sustainable development, security, defense, commerce, investment, technology, and internet. And furthermore, we will explore new areas of cooperation. We will also focus on issues such as Islamophobia, terrorism, internal conflict, and conflicts based on sectarian divides and ethnicity. And I hope and pray that we will be able to liberally discuss every issue at every extent possible. The Muslim world consists 1/4 of the entire global population, with a total population of 1.7 billion inhabitants. And we are going to focus on the possibilities whereby we will be able to mobilize the actual potential of our nations and our countries. In order for a more prosperous and a more liberated Islamic world to emerge, all of our brothers and sisters will be sharing their vast experience and know-how with us. That's why I would like to in advance thank each and every one of you for your candor. I would like to reiterate once more here in your presence, because it's an issue which is close to my heart and which deeply concerns me at the same time. The outstanding challenge before platforms of this scale are their failure of actual implementation and execution of our commitments and pledges. For example, we haven't covered any distance forward vis-a-vis the Palestinian problem. And similarly, we still cannot stop our resources getting completely depleted by other hands. And we cannot stop the sectarian divides from getting provoked on a continuous basis, and that is just due to the fact that we remain indifferent. We are not weak, we are not feeble. On the contrary, we are very strong. There's no difference between us as the members of the Islamic world and the rest of the powers of the world. And let me state the fact that in all of the realms that you could consider, the Islamic world is ranking at even a higher level. Despite all of the riches that Allah bestowed upon us, despite all of the oil, all of our population, all of our natural resources, the vast majority of the Muslims are fighting in the grasp of famine, poverty, and ignorance. And in order for that to be eradicated once and for all, we have to look towards ourselves and start a self-criticism, because our holy book of Quran commends us to question ourselves. We cannot blame others for our failures. Whatever we have suffered as the Muslims in the last 2 centuries, it's just due to the fact that we have not came to terms with our failures, and we have yet opted out to blame others for our mistakes. The more we can implement and execute our pledges, the better we will lead change and transformation. And I hope and pray that the Kuala Lumpur summit will be a turn of tide in that direction. Brothers and sisters, as a country located in the heart of Asia, Europe, and Africa, we are heavily impacted due to the incidents taking place in our proximity. Due to the conflict in Syria, more than 3.7 million Syrian brothers and sisters have fled oppression and tyranny and from the pressure of the terrorist organizations in order to seek refuge in our country. And we are taking full ownership of them. From Syria to Iraq, from Afghanistan to other parts of the world, we are currently sheltering millions of immigrants. And at the Kuala Lumpur summit, I would like to state that I have just been to a meeting in Geneva, which was called the First Convention on Refugees under the auspices of the United Nations, whereby I had pointed out to the suffering of the human race, especially in Syria and around our region. I have underlined the fact that we had to settle the disputes once and for all by taking a humanitarian approach towards the outstanding problems regarding the immigrants and the refugees. In every platform, in every meeting that we have been attending in the last decade or so, we have always been drawing the global attention to the humanitarian crises. We have always been stating the fact that the world order needs a new order to be resurrected based on justice and righteousness. The United Nations was established in the aftermath of the Second World War in order to defend the rights and the interests of the global powers. However, the Security Council of the United Nations is not representing 1.7 billion Muslims of the world, and I believe that the Security Council is way past its expiry date because we depend on the words that will be coming out of the mouth of the 5 permanent seat holders. We have been the term presidents of the OIC for 3 terms, and I believe our agendas will have to be revived and will have to be revised. This is a fact that we have always been talking about during our tenure as the term presidents of the OIC, but we cannot suffice by talking. We cannot suffice by identifying our problems. We have been closely monitoring the decisions that we had made in order to ensure its execution. In the face of the harassment of the Israeli authorities, we have always been fighting back in order to preserve the dignity of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. From Turkestan to Arakan, to Yemen, Libya, and Syria, we have always reacted against injustice in order to mobilize the actual potential of the Islamic world and in order to increase our potential trade volumes and revive our economic development and further strengthen our cooperation in the field of technology and finance. We had undertaken significant projects. And for the first time in the entire history of the OIC, we had organized the high-level public and private sector investment conference, along with the Social Development Ministers Conference in our country. However, in this day and age, we are still suffering from the indifference and the silence of the Islamic world. And we have been significantly disturbing the global powers who have been complaining about our stance because they have been benefiting from the fragmented structure of the Muslims until so far. And they wanted to reign us through terrorism and through street protests. And they have used their terrorist organizations such as the Fethullahists in order to deviate us from our path. And they have been using their media outlets in order to attack primarily myself and other Turkish authorities. They have been deploying thousands of trucks filled with heavy artillery and weaponry in order for them to be handed out to terrorists. And they wanted to silence Turkey, both internally and externally, and they wanted to stop us and deviate us through terrorism, through failed coup and economic terrorism. However, we've never retreated nor surrendered. Thanks to Allah, we have never bowed before them. The more they try to silence us, the stronger we talk about Palestine, Gaza, Arakan, Libya, Somalia, and Syria. The more we attack us, the more vocal we become, and we become even stronger in order to state that the world is greater than five. The more they try to divide us, the more they try to fragment us, we embrace our fraternity even further. And contrary to their efforts in order to legitimize terrorism, without any discrimination whatsoever, we are fighting back all forms of terrorist organizations. We have eradicated Daesh presence in Syria, who are the murderers of Muslims. Similarly, we are clearly evicting the PKK and YPG terrorists out of the regions that they had previously occupied. We are attaching great significance to strategic projects in order to protect our economic independency, like conducting trade between our nations using our local currencies. I hope and pray that from this moment on we will strengthen our stance and fight back by embracing the idea that all Muslims are brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters, from trade to politics, from foreign policy to defense industry and technology, unfortunately, we are still dealing with figures much infinitesimal than the actual potential that is embedded. The share of the Islamic world in the global economy is even less than 10%. The income discrepancy between the richest Islamic country and that of the poorest is more than 200 times. The Islamic countries have 59% of the global oil reserves and 58% of the global natural gas reserves. But despite that fact, 350 million brothers and sisters are in the full grasp of extreme poverty, and they're fighting for a livelihood. The Muslims consist of 1/4 of the global economy. However, their share in the global health expenses is limited down to 4%. However, the general literacy level around the world is 82.5%, whereas the same figure goes down to 70% only in the Islamic world. The Islamic countries, if you will, are sparing 3.7% of their total GDP for education, and all of the other countries around the world spare 4.8% of their total GDP only to be allocated for education. And those who are lost forever as a result of regional conflicts, by a vast majority, are consisting of Muslims, up to 94% to be exact. 1 out of 3 arms sold every day on a global scale finds its way in the Middle East. So I mean to say that the Muslims are using their resources for armament and for conflicts, and while doing so, they are enriching the Western arms dealers. As I have previously stated, and as we have been watching quite closely, this is the day and age where AI, quantum computers, and robotic technologies are being discussed, and we are wasting our energies as a result of internal conflicts. We are the leaders bearing the responsibility of hundreds of millions of people around us, and I know that none of us can be happy looking forward to the landscape that is before us. But we are members of a religion that declares that in every obscurity you will have to find a dimmest array of light for hope. We are the ummah of a prophet that proclaims to go and plant yet another seed, although we might be in the know that the apocalypse is on the brink. We cannot afford the luxury of losing ourselves in despair. We cannot be desperate. It's not becoming of us. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how challenging the world might become, we can never question the bounty and abundance of Allah, because every crisis will open an opportunity window. Should we stay as one? Should we unite? Should we remain brothers and sisters? And should we focus on the future instead of going backwards, the doors of abundance will open wide ahead of us. Let's not forget, we will find abundance and salvation in unity. However, we will get lost in vain in the hands of divisions. This, instead of talking about the problems on a continuous basis, we have to focus our efforts in finding settlements for the disputes once and for all. We have to attach significance to the projects that will mobilize our actual potential, and we need to complement one another. We have to further profound our cooperation in the field of defense, energy, advanced technology, and finance, which are strategic areas for further solidarity. We have to focus more and more on conducting trade with our local currencies. We have to be more charitable. We have to become even further philanthropists. And we have to stop waste from occurring in all of our nations. And there are many steps that we can jointly take forward, from environmental pollution to health and tourism. I hope and pray that in the latter phases of this meeting we will be sharing with you the concrete solutions to the prospective problems that we all suffer from. May Allah protect us from the divisions and bestow upon us the light of the Holy Quran, and we may remain on the path of our Prophet Muhammad. And with these thoughts and commitments in mind, I would like to conclude my remarks and say that Kuala Lumpur summit will hopefully yield the most auspicious results for the entire human race. And I would like to thank for being such gracious hosts, especially my distinguished and august brother, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir bin Mohamad, and I also would like to greet the entire nation of Malaysia. Thank you.